the old internet what's happening. You can tell we're not in the shop anymore. We're actually in Seattle. Was commissioned to finish up the wiring on a Coyote swap of an early S197 by a guy named Tristan. He's actually using a control pack, but wanted my help, and we're gonna get that going for him. Just arrived at the airport, got my bag, my tools, and now we're gonna wait for him to pick me up and then go see what this thing's all about. Five minutes in, we're already doing some bumper deletes. So here's the car. It's our guy Tristan in this wonderful shop here.
Hey, homemade garages are the best.
Yeah, so he's already got the Coyote in, and we're gonna figure out what we need for wiring and whatnot. Love the color. I'm gonna delete a headlight, get easier access to the
Guess you don't need
3-valve computer and all that good stuff. So let's do this dance. Alright, so we kind of figured out with Nate's wiring harness what needs to be kept and whatnot, and figured out a way. Good morning! So battery died right before I could do a recap, but now we're on day 2 of wiring this control pack for Tristan and his S197. It's got a nice little view here of my stay. But yeah, we'll get back there over to where the car is. I guess it's not even in the garage, not in the shop, but kid's doing you know, making his dream car. So once we get back over there, I'll show you how we kind of routed things, and I'll recap my thoughts on this whole using the control pack on this chassis and what I think of doing it with that method. You can probably already guess what I think, but let's get back over there and show you what's going on and how we're going to proceed and wire things up so we can get his gauges working as well and all that good stuff, and of course get the engine running, because he built this engine from a short block, essentially. Nothing crazy, stock compression, blah blah blah, just was on a budget and wanted to build things on his own time, so he's anxious to hear it fire up the first time as well as myself. So let's get over there. All right, so we're back, and we've kind of done I feel a unique placement of like the control pack ECU we're gonna put up. It's gonna be a little higher, have the 3-valve computer still in place because they're using Lethal Nate's wire trimming. A lot of these we won't actually have to use because there's ACU that we're not using. We're gonna tie into the Coyote computer and its coolant temperature, and then we're going to tie in the CAN bus later once we get all that stuff. Like we have to, you know, tie in the fuel pump and all that stuff. So we got just everything in place. So now we can extend the wires, add the, where'd that thing go for the fuse, the big main fuse to hook up to the control packs, fuse box, and all that good stuff. So now it's time to party. we got the pedal harness extended, one of many. We still got to do the OBD2. And what else we got to extend? Tristan's making the main power feed wire to go from the big fuse block which you mounted to the control pack.
I made it too long.
Yes, and then there's the fuel pump, which we're going to run all the way back to the fuel hat and just hook that directly to the pump because he's running a Corvette filter, so it's essentially return. And then hook up with the 3-valve computer in play. We don't have to do any start wires, we just have to hook up the ignition so that this thing wakes up. Alright, so we had the fuel pump connected, accelerator pedal harness extended, just need to go through that grommet. Now, in order to tie the two systems together there, the 3-valve and the Coyote computer, got these 3 wires. 2 of them are the CAN bus so that all our gauges work, and the other one is the fan control. So this is just going to control the low speed relay side of the fan, and the control pack only has a high speed versus OEM has a low and high, so we're just going to tie it to both the low and high speed relays so that it'll all be hunky-dory and work when it should. Got the battery on, alternator hooked up. We're about to at least prime the oil system for the first time, and once you turn the key, you see if there's any fuel leaks and whatnot. Get this party started. Really, on the newer control packs, they actually do cycle the fuel pump on and off. On my older one, my Fox, they actually keep the fuel pump running on all the time. Don't see any leaks in the fuel rail here, Tristan. See underneath this mess. No drippy drips. You don't smell anything? I'm gonna just crank it over to build the oil pressure up. So whenever you're ready. Nothing?
Oh no, I'm scared.
Keep going. Somebody forgot to get power steering fluid. That guy. We gotta go get some before we fire this thing up. Here we go. So as you can see, this thing was just cranking and cranking, pulled the fuel line, had fuel pressure, at least to our surprise. And what do you think happened here, Tristan? Why it's not firing off?
Someone fucked up.
So there's this crank trigger wheel, as many of you guys know, that is in the back of these cars, and I'm fairly certain he forgot to put it on after I googled him the picture because he didn't know what it looked like. So
Because nothing I watched fucking had it.
and on that bombshell, we'll see you next time. I'll talk a little bit more of this later. So it's unfortunate we couldn't hear it run in person, so now Tristan has some work ahead of him. All right, back at the hotel, you saw the rookie mistake of Tristan forgetting the trigger wheel. Truly unfortunate. Gave us all and his friends that were waiting to have him send videos of the first startup all blue balls, including myself. I was like, but we got the OBD2 extended after that, so that's in the stock location. But yeah, kind of sucks we couldn't hear it in real life fire up for the first time, because that's always a huge moment, especially since he had rebuilt the engine essentially and had it all apart. Did this himself, his first engine build. So what I want to do is break down my final thoughts on using a control pack in a 3-valve car and how it just ain't it, all right? So not only was he opting to use a control pack, because wiring is not his strong suit, it's his weak suit, he's using Lethal Nate's trimmed harness. So what that means is we have the 3-valve computer still in play. So it becomes an issue when you're trying to do certain things. First thing I noticed or realized is, since the 3-valve computer is in play, your speedometer is going to work because the trans harness connector of the 3-valve is getting its speed signal from the transmission. He's still using the 5-speed TR3650 behind this Coyote. So what that means is speedometer is going to be calibrated just fine, but to the current gearing. What does that mean? Why is that a big deal? Because if he puts in 410, 373s, 456s, whatever, it's not going to be calibrated anymore. The speedometer is going to read faster. Oh, just get a tune to correct it. Yeah. He would have to tune the 3-valve computer to correct the speedometer, and not the Coyote computer of the control pack. Or hook up those wires into the control pack and hope that it recognizes a signal, blah, blah, blah. It's just a mess. Another thing is the starting system is being controlled by the 3-valve computer, essentially. Which is fine. It made things a lot easier to hook up. We didn't have to hook up the starter signal wire to the control pack or the clutch. We just grounded that connector out, cut it off, ground it out, but it still has a clutch safety switch because the 3-valve computer is still in play. What's good and bad about that? Mostly good on our part. We had to do less work. We didn't have to hook up the control pack starter, even though it's all fused, but it's just another thing. Like, now you have this other extra stuff kind of in the way. The other big thing is the fact that there's still 2 ECUs in there. 3-valve computer kind of had to go where it hangs out usually from the factory, and then we decided to put the Coyote computer you saw on the driver's side. He still has to make a bracket to get that away from the header. It cluttered up the things. Luckily, he deleted the AC, so we were able to put the control pack's fuse box behind the driver's side strut tower. Now, with Lethal Nate's wiring, there's a tack wire supposed to hook up. To the crank position sensor or whatever. I didn't really understand that, but we just hooked up the CAN bus wires to the 4.6 connector so that it would all work. I couldn't verify that, but that's literally how we do it when we either hardwire it like I did with my car, or my harness, my plug and play harness does the same thing essentially. Just hooks up the Coyote CAN bus wires to the car because it all talks to each other. So even if we weren't using the Lethal Nate's wiring or control pack or the 3-valve wiring, or we were using the control pack anyway, we still needed an oil pressure sensor wire, so that was in the trim harness from Nate, and had to route that. So his car didn't have oil pressure gauge, but it has a light, so not sure how that's gonna perfectly work out, because it has a 1-pin wire, and the guys at O'Reilly were like, well, the gauge one or the light one uses a 3 wire, like, you know how those guys are. And another thing with like the trimmed harness, it has the coolant temperature sensor, the cylinder head temperature sensor that you're supposed to hook to the Coyote, but with CAN bus hooked up, you don't have to do that. So there was, like, besides all the extra AC wires, there's like 4 or 5 things that we didn't need. I don't know if there's miscommunication between him and Nate. It's not really my deal, but he'll be able to. One thing I wanted him to verify, though, once he does get it running, is that the coolant temperature gauge registers with the CAN bus wires as it should, and then he can snip and seal the coolant wires from the 3-valve trans harness, or the engine harness. Let's talk about the cooling fans. So, control pack works great in every other chassis but these cars. So, in order to get the cooling fans to work, you could use the control pack. It's all fused to feed high amperage wires to your fan. Control pack, ECU, and that setup only has a 1-speed fan, high. If you look at the body connector of the Coyote, the 70-pin cowl connector, the low-speed fan trigger wire is non-existent, so that strategy of the control pack ECU just turns on the fan, and that's what you get. So what we did, which I've done on an actual Coyote car with 2 fans when we did on-3 turbo, took the high-speed trigger wire, spliced into that, all the way to the 3-valve fuse box connector, and split it into the high and low speed trigger wire. So it's all low amperage wires, and so whenever it wants low or high speed, it'll trigger that, and the fan will work like it should. So now we kind of did it the easy way. Since the car is already set up to have all the high amperage stuff, the high side of the relays, it's all there, this made the most sense and easier for me to just run those low amperage wires, trigger wires, through that block. They're A12 and C11, something like that. Yeah, A12, C11 on that block. You tap into those wires, and so usually the 3-valve, like, so this way the Coyote computer tune will control when the fan comes on, and not the 3-valve tune if you hooked up the 3-valve coolant temperature sensor. So it's another thing where, like, oh, if you want the fans to come on, but you have the 3-valve computer controlling the fans, you'd have to get a tune for your 3-valve computer, but you have the tune in your Coyote. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, the CAN bus wire stuff was simple. It's just the 2 wires, high and low. That'll get his gauges, work his tack, and all that good stuff. Yeah, so one really goofy thing, which I couldn't test because, but I think with just having the key on and whatnot, was, since we're on the CAN bus, the check engine light on the cluster can be turned on by either computer. You have a check engine light, what is it going to be? In fact, with just the ignition on, it had a wrench light blinking and an engine light blinking. I told him, like, this 3-valve computer is probably really upset. There's going to be so many codes for open circuits that it's not even really funny. That's why the wrench light's on, because it doesn't see a throttle body connection. And this, that, and the other thing is just like, what the heck? Another thing is the fuel pump. Luckily the control pack comes with a nice line in any chassis. This would be great, especially in Foxes. It gives you the high amperage side of the fuel pump to hook up. It's already fused and relayed, whatever, in its little fuse box, and it gives you the high amperage, like 10 gauge, 12 gauge wire, and a lot of it. So that was great because we just ran it along the door sill through the grommet that we ran, like the OBD2 and the accelerator pedal and the ignition wires, all along the bottom of the door sill, and then to the fuel pump connected that directly. So what I had to do, since it's on a return system now with the Corvette filter, hooked up that power wire from the control pack for the fuel pump directly to the positive side of the fuel pump connector on the fuel hab. Pull it off, did that, and then, but the thing is that the fuel pump driver module modulates ground in a returnless system, so that's not what you have to do. You actually also have to give the ground wire of the fuel pump direct to ground. So we found a good ground spot back there, and the fuel pump turned on. And it's funny because the older control packs, like I have in the Fox, the OG one with the weird fuse box, not like an OEM looking one, when you turn the key on, fuel pump's always on. This one actually still acts like an OEM one. It cycles it on and then turns the fuel pump off. So we got the prime system check for fuel leaks and whatnot. And good thing, he did a good job making his AN lines first time he did that. So that was cool. No leaks, no oil leaks anyway, from an oil relocation kit. So fuel pump stuff was simple. It'll just be, if he decides to ditch the control pack because he wants to, like, maybe go twins later on, because there's not going to be much room with that ECU and everything else in the way, he will be able to reverse that easy. Like, this whole thing can be reversed easy, and I'll get into that. So like I said, he can reverse all this. Let's say he wanted to use my method, got really good at wiring, and hardwired himself. Perfect. The body side of the car is virtually untouched besides tapping into the, I guess if you, the CAN bus wires would be the only thing that we touched on the body side of the computer for the 4.6 and the fuel pump wires. And whether or not you're using hardwiring it or using our new plug-and-play harness, you're going to have to fish wires through to hook up to the pedal anyway. So that'll all just hang out, and it'll be easy to redo that. So if he wants to get rid of that control pack, get rid of the 3-valve computer and everything nice and clean, he will still be able to do easily down the road and not have to like really. So everything was piggyback nice so that he could get the engine running. So yeah, it was quite the learning process. It definitely opened my eyes. You know, I was such a huge advocate in the first place of not using a control pack on these chassis because it made zero sense to me, when now you have the options that I've had and have presented to you guys with either hardwiring it or using this plug and play harness, because the car's architecture is already all there, and you can just let the OEM ECU or PCM Coyote computer do all that work for you when you convert it the correct way, and it'll look super factory. Besides the adapter that you saw in the last video going to the Coyote, like that's only gonna be like the non-factory looking thing. You'll see that, of course, but other than that, it's kind of tucked down by the computer, so you're not really gonna, it's not gonna be the first thing you see. Be like, oh, obviously this is like swap. You know, anybody that looks at it be like, it's gonna look factory, but that's gonna be like one of the telltales. So it's kind of a two-sided thing that I was glad I got to help him out. You know, he commissioned me to come out and help him because wiring was definitely his weak suit, as he openly admitted, and I was able to learn that I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but there's just no better way to swap these cars than not doing it this way. The conditions we got to work in were a little less than stellar. It's fine, we've all been there. Younger guy, it's fine. And it was very, you know, good stories. It's just that now I can say I've helped swap and know firsthand that this way is just not it. It is just not it. I don't want to knock on Nate at all. The harness thing is a good idea. It was a good solution. It's just it's time to evolve. We're gonna evolve. We're gonna collaborate on things in the future, so we'll definitely keep you updated on that. So, like I said in the last video, there's no bad blood. We were on the phone this weekend for the first time talking about stuff and whatnot. So, it's just this is gonna be the way to do it. So, if you haven't checked our plug and play swap harness, please do. It's gonna make your life a lot easier if you're swapping a Coyote in one of these cars, because that's the #1 hurdle to overcome. Mechanically, slam dunk, like I've always said. To get it going all electrically, it's always been the Achilles heel of people that aren't comfortable with that. I'm gonna make that easy for you. So if you like this video, like the adventure, hit that like button and please consider subscribing. We'll see you next time.
One week later.